Welcome to our very first Women Lead webinar series brought to you by Connected Women of Influence. I'm Michelle Bergquist, co-founder and CEO of Connected Women of Influence, and we are absolutely delighted to bring you this new webinar series to our Association of Professional Women. Our webinar series, affectionately called Women Lead Webinars, are designed for you as the professional leader in business, for you as the professional who wants to lead more effectively in business. If you're a woman owner, we are so excited that we are putting together a series of topics and themes that will help you and assist you as a female leader of your company where you lead projects or teams or people in taking your business to the next level. For our listeners and our viewers who are current and aspiring women leaders, we have designed a selection of topics and themes that will support your goal to lead and achieve and succeed more effectively in business. So I'm excited today to share with you that our very first webinar is on a topic that is very near and dear to my heart, and it is one that is absolutely about women's advancement. And today I want to share with you some insights that can move you as a professional woman from invisible to invaluable. And of course, there's always a story behind a webinar, right? As far as how things come across. In 2015, I published a book called How Women Sabotage Their Success in Business. Wait for it. According to men. And there is a story why this book came about, but it has been absolutely a labor of love and insight. I cannot believe how this book came about, so I just wanted to share and set the stage of what this book has meant and what some of the different information is from it. As a professional association and a leader of an association, we started in, I think it was about 2009. We started doing what we called our CEO Executive Panel Forums, and we would invite amazing female leaders to share their wisdom, their advice, their keys to success, how they learn things maybe the hard way, what they've overcome as obstacles. And, we moderated a panel of some amazing female leaders regularly where they would share incredible lessons learned and advice and stories with us on their success to be an incredible leader as a woman in business. And so we did these for a few years. And I remember one of our members who approached me and said, Michelle, I really love the information we're getting at the panel forums, but oh my gosh, she goes, I work with a lot of men, and she goes, I would really be interested to hear their perspective. And as I recall, it kind of stopped me because I went, wow, would that be very interesting or not so interesting for women? And as it turned out, I'm one of those that said, let's try this. So in 2012, we actually started and launched our very first, what we affectionately called our man panel. And our man panels were quite infamous in Southern California. So we had our first man panel in 2012, and I invited 5 incredible leaders that were all men, different industries. We had 5 men on a stage, and I just want to share with all of our female viewers and listeners that I've never seen 5 more fearful men walk on a stage. But we had over 150 attendees at our first man panel, and the men that I interviewed, one was the CEO of a commercial property management and investment business. Another man leader was from the risk management and insurance industry. We had an incredible leader in banking. We had a retired rear admiral from the Navy who was super insightful. And we also had a CEO that ran a marketing and communications firm in Southern California. So we lined up all these men, and the kind of backstory even further than that was one of the colleagues that I invited to the stage was in risk management. And I'm going to give props to Larry Suke because he actually did some research before he came on stage on the panel, and he had reached out to his colleagues and said, Michelle, I said, hey, brothers, I'm doing this amazing panel. It's like I'm going to be asked to go on stage and share some of my insight and my ideas and how women can advance in business and not sabotage themselves in business. And I remember him sharing that he was doing some research, and he said he was overwhelmed with some of the replies. Some of the replies were, are you crazy? What are you thinking? Are you nuts? But he pursued. And some of the feedback that he got from some of the men were, well, now that you've asked, they said, keep this confidential. Here's some of my insight. So he came actually to the panel with some information of the kind of 50 ways women, can advance in business. So he presented this information at our panel, and it got me thinking. I thought, my gosh, what if there was a way to bottle and to collect and interview more than just for our panels, but actually to go out and seek the advice of what men think women can do to advance in business. So in 2012, I started interviewing men. I interviewed executives, I interviewed CEOs, I interviewed men in different industries. I mean, I, to this day, cannot believe the access that I was granted through referrals and interviews to exceptional men who agreed to sit down with me and just share their insights on what they see within their scope of people management on what women do that sabotage their success. And I interviewed over 500 men. I mean, these are men throughout the United States, different industries like oil and gas, telecommunications, commercial banking, industry from, press and communications. I mean, it was just the gamut. Men in the entertainment industry and men running catering businesses and manufacturing firms. So it was incredible, the access that I was granted. And so these interviews, I mean, one of the first questions that, I think they were fabulous, but one of the questions I think all of you might want to be asking is, should we as women do as men say? Should we listen to what men say about how to advance in business? And I say yes, but I really would love your feedback. These interviews were incredible. Most of the men said, please don't use my name. I want to be absolutely, above board, but they were a little fearful about backlash. And so once I did one interview, I asked for referrals to other. But the questions that I asked them were, what is it that we as women are not seeing? Or what do you see in behavior or actions that you feel hold women back, from advancing to, let's say, higher positions or leadership positions within business and industry? The other interesting part about my interviews with men is that, why did men agree to do my interviews? And I have to say, this is something for me that touched my heart, only because for men, there were some jerks. There were some men that, laughed and said, oh, why would I want to support women with this kind of information? But then there were men that were over 70% of the men that I spoke to who touched my heart in ways I just really had no idea. And I asked the question with every single interview. I said, for my readers and our listeners and our viewers, I'm interviewing you, asking you for authentic advice and information on how women can advance in business. So from your perspective, what is it that you can share with me so that my audience and my supporters will feel like this is authentic information? And the part, like I said, that touched my heart is over and over and over again, so many men shared with me that they agreed to the interview because they have daughters. Or some of the men I interviewed said, I have granddaughters and I want them to have it easier and more successful than what they see currently with, quote, the status of women in business and industry. So from my standpoint, I thought, oh my gosh, these men do understand that there is, such support, and we need to help the next generation. So that's why most men agreed. The other reason that men agreed was because they just really see how hard it is for women to succeed in business. I mean, a lot of these men, of course, had wives, and they're trying to be leaders in business, and they have conversations and see how tough it is for women to advance in business. The other interesting part as I get into some tips and some suggestions is that the women that men admire the most, this again was very interesting to me because I thought, oh my gosh, it's going to be, Oprah Winfrey or women like Hillary Clinton in politics or, women that are, super, super uber business leaders. And what again touched my heart was the women that men admire the most are their mothers. A lot of the men I interviewed said they had a mother that was a single mom, worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3 jobs, which I was like, wow, 3 jobs that their mother put them through school and their siblings, by working 3 jobs to make it work. The other part, that so many men said over and over is, their spouse, their wife is who they really admire the most because they see how hard it is for women to advance and get ahead in business. So, ladies, all I want you to know is they get it. They really do get it. And so they gave some phenomenal advice. And that's what I want to share with you today is I just want you to hear some of the collective wisdom of what men say, that we do as women that sabotage our success in business. And here we go. And, number one on the list, which this one was very disappointing to me. I heard this over and over from the men I interviewed, and that we as women need to think allies, with each other and not be enemies to each other. Over and over again, I would hear story after story after story how men would say, it's like I put a group of men together, or men and women. It's like, the men will fight. It's like they'll turn around next day, they're fine. Women, on the other hand, and this is hard because I'm a female leader as well, but to hear this over and over again from men that we as women, if we would do one thing, ladies, and that is if we would truly support one another professionally, help the next one in line, be a mentor and an advocate to other women, that alone would move the needle forward for us. And that was very disheartening to hear that over and over in every interview of the number one thing men think that we don't do as women that could truly and that sabotages our success in business is that we don't support one another. So the first tip or the suggestion is that you've got to think allies, not enemies with other women. There's the old adage that, women who are in leadership positions will be like, I got here, you figure it out. The nice news is that I am seeing over and over and over again in organizations and companies that there are women's initiatives going on, there are mentoring opportunities that go on, and sponsorship matches where women are being put together and supported by current female leaders with aspiring women leaders and really, truly, organizing themselves to say we need to support the next one in line. In addition to that, I have to say in our association, that is one of our primary passions, if I can say that, is women supporting women, really truly being an advocate for each other. And so I encourage all of you to know that this is one thing, if we do, we can see more success for women in business. So think allies, not enemies. In addition to that, they said that we as women, this was again one over and over, is that we as women need to learn and know our worth. And what that means is, what value are you bringing to the organization or the company either you work for or that you're running? If it's a division, if it's a department, if it's a unit, if it's a team of people, if you're leading a project, what is your worth and value that you're bringing in benefit to the company or the organization? And what was interesting is some of the interviews, men would be saying, oh my gosh, women will talk about how they work hard and that they're really busy, but they don't speak in terms of value and worth. And what that means by men is that when you know your value, you know how the company is benefiting by the work you're doing. So what my suggestion is to ladies, to all of you, is that be able to talk in terms of statistics or facts or dollars or cents. I mean, if you are someone that is not in sales, so you can't talk in terms of revenue you're bringing into the organization, you most definitely can bring value in different ways. You might be someone that through your operation or how you execute or how you do the job, you might be saving the company dollars and cents in terms of expenses or productivity. And trust me, it's like the value and worth that you bring to a company can be amazing if you're saving the organization money or time because you're more efficient in how you do the work or you have your team do the work. So know your value, know how you're bringing benefit to the organization. If you're involved in a project, think in terms of what kind of value does that project bring to the company in results and milestones. If you are able to, as an example, through ideas, have some sort of new perspective that is going to bring the company more revenue, that is incredible. But don't just say it brings the company or might bring the company more revenue. Speak in terms of it has the potential to bring revenue to the organization of $50 million or $50,000. I mean, come up with something that makes sense and assumptions that you can start to think, how do you bring value and worth to the organization? I think this one was phenomenal. I had a really incredible mentor when I was in commercial banking that would always share with me, Michelle, speak in, dollars, cents, percentages, time costs, time savings. Let people know the worth that you bring to the table. So this one I absolutely felt was spot on by a lot of the men. And if you listen many times to leaders in business, they will speak this way. They will talk in cost savings, time savings, revenue earned, the potential for revenue to be earned. So they're putting those dollars and cents and percentages in their speak, which is amazing. The other thing that men suggested is that we as women need to turn our ask on. And I definitely see this all the time. And I struggled with this for myself as a professional woman in my early days in banking, and even as a business owner and a leader, is many times we'll think, oh, we'll just get it done. We'll just put our nose to the grindstone and we'll just work really hard. But what men shared is that working hard is not the answer. If you want to get a raise, if you want a promotion, if you're looking to be able to get assigned to a project that could have some incredible visibility and potential for you, or if you're somebody that wants more business because you're leading a company, we've got to get our ask on. Ask, for the position and the project and the raise. We've got to ask, to be able to get the business and to be able to get the referral from people. There's so many ways that I see women will say, oh, I don't do that as effectively as I should. And we need to ask. We need to ask for the money. We need to ask for the invoice to be paid in some cases. I know for me as a female leader, when we invoice companies, I'll need to follow up and go, just following up. It's like, can you give me an idea of when this invoice can be paid? It's never fun, but there's so many different ways we need to ask more effectively. And a big one is I see women every day in our association that will not ask for support, for resources, for help, for assistance, for just, some sort of feedback. I mean, women will kind of, again, nose to the grindstone, never let anybody see you sweat. So this is one tip that I thought I see women over and over. We don't ask as much as we should. And I'm learning to do that as well. And I've been in business quite a long time. So make sure you are putting your ask on much more than what you've been doing. The other thing that men shared is that, again, interacting with women every day in different scenarios and different situations, I heard from men quite a bit through my interviews that women don't kind of focus in on what's most important in their role, their profession, their business, is that they don't understand everything in business is about delivering results. And the more you can focus in on delivering results, whether it's completed or not, I mean, even moving forward on projects that are not completed but in process or almost there, can be where you can showcase how you can deliver results. And again, it's about women who will say, I'm working hard, I'm working 12 hours a day, nobody cares. It's like, ladies, it's about delivering results. What results are you getting? If you're focused on working hard and the project isn't going as planned, a lot of men shared with me through stories that they said, focus in on what you've accomplished, what's done, and then make a recommendation for what still needs to be done. Not focusing on how many hours you're putting in or the work, how much work you're doing. That's the key thing, is that focus in on how you deliver results. I know this one's hard because I was involved in many projects where they would tank a project. You feel like you're putting in all these hours, you're working with a team that gets nowhere. You take one step forward and five back. But again, a lot of this is about communication. When you think about how you deliver results, going back to what a previous comment was and suggestion, which is know your worth. What value are you bringing to the table? Maybe the project wasn't done 100%, but even if you moved forward 25%, I have a better visual in dollars, numbers, and cents that show me how you deliver results. And I hope that makes sense, because this is one area that I've really had to learn the hard way in how to speak. It's not about how many hours I put in or how hard I work. It's about the results that I'm achieving. And so that's where, if you're an owner of a business, keeping your statistics, knowing your numbers and your finances, knowing how many, I'm trying to think, even having metrics of what your employees are doing so that you can focus in on how are we delivering results, good, bad, or otherwise. We can't measure it if we can't track it, we can't measure it. And I know that's an interesting part, but delivering results comes back to me as an owner, and I need to always go back and look at what our results are and how we can modify and tweak so we get better success. Just a few ideas. Another thing that men suggested in my interviews was that we as women need to learn that business is a game. If you ever interact with men or see a group of men together, there is banter, there is, a camaraderie in an interesting way. But, in my interviews with men, I heard so many analogies of, business is like chess, and you need to learn and be thinking about 2, 3, or 4 moves ahead. Another analogy by men was business is like football, and you gotta have a coach, and, you have to be a team player, and you have to know what your position and your role is and how that interacts with the team. So men definitely, and again, this is very male centric, for women, what we're great at is, nurturing the team and building that camaraderie. But the suggestions that men shared with us is to understand business is a game. It's about winning. It's about achieving. It's about succeeding. And it was very, nuts and bolts there. And that we as women need to learn how to play the game. There's a banter involved. There is a sense of competitiveness. There is a sense that somebody's going to win and somebody's not, but it's always about winning and then learning how to win or pulling back. If you think of wars and battles, it's kind of like retrenching, regrouping, tweaking, and then coming back out again with a game plan. So, good or bad, what your opinions are on this one, I have to say, I feel better when I look at business as a game. It's about moving forward with maneuvers or strategies or action, that it's about playing the game to win. And it's just really changed my mindset. And I know some of the women I've spoken to at different associations or different internal groups of women that will say, gosh, I just have a different perspective now. I was just thinking it was about working hard, dealing with the company politics, and there are politics, company politics in every organization. But I think if we learn that business is a game and it's about being, winning or learning, and tweaking how we do what we do to be more successful in winning the game, it just kind of changes the analogy a little bit and changes our mindset. The other thing suggested by men is that we need to get our brag on. And for some of you, you might not be laughing at this one, but I will tell you what I see on a daily basis with women, and I do this myself. Like I said, I'm not avoid of all the things I'm suggesting, from my interviews with men. But I do see women, when someone gives them a compliment, is they'll downplay it, and they'll say, "Oh, it was nothing. It was a team effort. It didn't take that much time." And men over and over, And again, I want you to think as a woman, how many times have you seen where a man gets a compliment and a man will get a compliment and he'll go, "Yeah, thanks. That's it." And what a woman will do in the same scenario, she gets a compliment for a project or an atta girl or something like that. She'll go, "Oh, it was all the team. It wasn't me." And the suggestions from men were, "Ladies, take the compliment. Just take the compliment and say thank you." And the other part too about, we never want to be as women too braggadocious. I think we're brought up that way. I hear a lot of women that will say, "Oh, I don't want to be braggadocious. I don't want to, kind of be that way." And yet, sometimes it's like we need to toot our own horn and we need to find a way that will work for us individually and at the same time bring out those little items so that when we're in the right scenario of either leaders that you're looking to impress, I mean, trust me, we've all been there, right? We don't want to maybe appear braggadocious, but we need to let people know our credible worthiness on occasion. And so it's how you bring out your credentials or how you bring up your accomplishments. I mean, if you're in a situation, you don't, again, want to be braggy, but what you want to do is strategically bring up, and say, as an example, "Oh gosh, when we did that project last year, I know, gosh, it was such a successful project. We accomplished," or even I mean, you got to put in the I sometimes as well, is, my team, we achieved $50 million in increased expenses that we saved the company, $50 million, again, the terms, the statistics, the dollars, the cents, but you've got to put out your brag once in a while and get your brag on. So laugh or not, but this is something, again, I don't see women do as effectively as they can. We as women need to learn to draft, and the first time I heard this from some of the guys and gentlemen and dudes that I interviewed is they would say, "You got to learn to draft." And I'm like, "What does that mean?" I go, "Help me understand." And there is a concept in NASCAR, which is stock car racing, that in NASCAR, it's an extremely effective way when you are racing cars for you to learn to draft behind a car that's in front of you. And the reason for that is the forward momentum and all the effort and all of the kind of struggle, if you will, is put on the first car. So you as the second car behind them, as you're drafting, you are actually almost being pulled along. So you're not using, it's not as difficult, you're not using as much gas, you're not using as much energy. And it allows you to kind of follow the leader, so to speak, but to be more effective. And that's exactly what they mean when men said to me, women need to learn to draft, is that we as women need to find successful leaders and look to have them be not only a sponsor, but an advocate of us. Because the more we can learn from others who have been there and done that, and again, I can hear a lot of you as women going, "Oh my gosh, I've asked people where I could pick their brain or, ask them questions." And first thing I want to share with all of you is nobody wants to have their brain picked, but everybody wants to learn from those who have been there and done that and succeeded so that we can learn to draft and how to be more effective based on someone else who's been there and done it successfully. So my suggestion to you, and this is something, there is a whole other series of webinars we are going to have that come out on this, is that for you to learn to be a mentor or find a mentor, is this is strategic for you. I don't think having a mentor assigned to you works, in my opinion. And again, I'm coming from the fact that I interact with female leaders and aspiring women leaders on a daily basis. But we as women need to be strategic in looking at our own talents, our own abilities, and where we want to go with our profession or our business, and ask ourselves, what's missing? Where are my skills and abilities and talents not as fine-tuned as they could be to be more successful? And what that means is, for you as a woman, is to find someone that you feel could be an amazing mentor and advocate to you, and approach them, but you need to be purposeful about what you ask them in advice or resources or for some feedback. And I see so many women that, again, it's a fearful process, but the interesting part is I can't tell you how many executives and leaders, both men and women, who have said to me over and over, including a lot of the interviews with men, but also the women leaders I've come across, who will say, I would be happy to be a mentor or an advocate. I just need somebody to ask me. And that's very telling. And I kind of want to pause there for a moment and go, if you're not asking, do you remember where we talked about that earlier? If you're not asking, you're not going to get. And so learn to draft means to go and approach someone and say to them, if you think they are someone who's an achiever and a leader that you might learn from, is to approach them, not to say, can I pick your brain? But to approach them and say, I really respect who you are and what you've accomplished. I'm so impressed. I really have aspirations for growth and, for the future success of me and my business or my profession. And, could I schedule time with you to take you to lunch or have a meeting or even a phone conversation, just to run a few things by you, because I'd love your perspective. I'm telling you, I've yet had somebody to tell me that someone turned them down. And I will say, understand that most successful leaders, if you're going to try to find an advocate or a sponsor or an advocate, they're busy. So you need to be purposeful, you need to be very strategic, and the heavy lifting is up to you. You've got to know what you want from these leaders because their time is priceless and you're asking them for support and assistance. So it is very much strategic for you, and I know we're going to have other webinar series on this very topic, so stay tuned. But learn to draft and find those that you think are achievers that you might approach and interview them, ask for their perspective, share with them what you're struggling with, and see if they can open any doors or make some suggestions for you. And I'm seeing women that are finding success with this. And I know for myself as a business leader, that I have had some incredible mentors and they change over time. The same mentor is not going to be with you forever. You can have different mentors for different things, because everybody has talent and skills that you may not have a one-size-fits-all mentor or advocate. I'm going to be speaking of something here, and that is, I call it women speak versus men speak. In my interviews with men, I will say, and again, this is, I think, communication style, right? We're talking about male communication styles versus female communication styles. And I think some of us can say at this point, yes, women are from Mars, men are from Venus, because we're two different genders. But one of the things men suggested is that we need to be mindful of our speaking and communication skills. And this is hard, but I will say some of the ones that stood out, I just want to share a couple, was what so many men said, they call it female speak. I call it up speak. And for women, it's almost like we're making a statement, but we're asking a question. And, there are things we can do as women to really increase and improve our power and our confidence and our results. Meaning that it's like for we as women, we have a tendency to speak a little higher in decibel level. And I know for me, when I get nervous, I start to speak higher. My decibel level goes up. For a lot of women, they will do what I call upspeak, as they will make a comment as if they're making a statement, but they will say, well, here's my thought, right? They'll end the statement with a question. And it's just, it does not help your influence or your position. Or if you're trying to persuade or influence, it really diminishes your results. And so this, again, is probably one of those topics that we will come out with in our women webinar series, that we will talk more about how to speak more confidently, speak more clearly as female leaders, because it's about influence and it's about persuading to get the job done. So if you look at it from that aspect, there are things you can do with your nonverbal communication, which is not what you say, but your gestures and your tone of voice, because that has much more meaning than the words you say. And so we'll be coming out with some webinars on that, but be mindful of how you speak. If you're not getting the results you're looking for, sometimes it has to do with how you're saying it, not necessarily what you're saying. Oof, that's some food for thought, right? One of my final points is men shared that we as women need to be more visible strategically. One of the things that happens with men, and women are doing more of this, but men, kind of are cultured, and mentored when they start in business. They golf, they get together with other business leaders, and men are on the golf course, they're golfing. So not that I'm suggesting every woman needs to golf, But I am suggesting that as a woman who wants to get ahead in business, we need to be more visible. And again, it's not about working hard. Working hard does not matter. It's about being effective. But what this point was that a lot of men shared is that we as women need to be much more visible strategically. We need to be visible in the right places. If you work for an organization, are you visible where senior management is? And women will ask me all the time, well, how do I do that? And one of the things that was suggested to me by my mentor and that I did when I was in commercial banking, and I'll share some things men shared, is that think about where senior management hangs out. Senior management goes to maybe collective business functions that are put on by the organization. You need to be visible. You need to walk up to senior management and say, good morning, and know who they are and try to have a conversation. For a lot of men, they said, as a senior management, I love when people will come up and ask me my opinion. You've got to know current events. This is something for you to kind of be strategic about and manage. And I know being visible for owners as women means you need to be visible in the business community, not anywhere, but being strategic. Are you interacting with people that are other business leaders that, one, could bring you value, that two, might be advocates or mentors, and three, that might, through a relationship, you both can bring value to one another. So visibility has a big piece to the success of women advancing in business. And I know I've had to navigate this and learn, I can't be everywhere. So I need to be purposeful about where I get involved in, what I get involved in. As a business leader in my community, one of the things I look for is, what turns out other business leaders, where do executives and decision makers go? When I worked for the commercial bank I worked at, one of my mentors, which I laugh because so many men suggested this as a strategy for women to do, and this is one thing that does sabotage their success, is when they're not visible. And it's not about working extra hours, but being visible could be taking on a leadership role with a nonprofit organization or sitting on a board. And most women don't have a strategy around this, right? We're too busy and we're all in the state of busyness. But for a lot of women, visibility means be seen as a leader in the right places. And again, this will be another Women Lead webinar topics that we'll work on, is how to be more visible, how you can leverage that for your success, both as the leader of an owner and at the same time for a leader working for another organization. The last thing I want to share is that, for some of you, maybe you've tuned out. I hope that's not the case. But if you listen to my message, so many women think, oh, I have to change who I am as a woman. And I'm not suggesting that at all. Over and over, men said, I go, what? You're asking women to be men? They said, no. It's like, be who you are. But the key here on everything I've talked about is be you and learn to adapt. We need to learn to adapt to the environment and the culture and the organization we work for. That, again, there were lots of stories by men that would share. They see women that, I went through a lot of mergers and acquisitions when I was in commercial banking. And one of the things I had to learn that I didn't love, but I had to just learn, is how to adapt to the new culture of the organization that I was merged into, right? It was their culture. We were blending in, so we had to blend. And I had to learn how to adapt. And for you as a female leader to be more effective, you have to look at the culture of the organization. You have to look at what are the things going on in the organization that you work within, or you have to look at your business and say, if I want to be more effective, I might have to change my behavior or my actions to be a better leader. And that's what it's about, is all these suggestions that I got from men and I've packaged up. I thought they were amazing, right? I've shared this message with women throughout the United States, at a lot of companies, where the biggest feedback I get by women is they go, I get it. It's not about me changing who I am. It's about tweaking how I execute and behave and act to get better results. And I hope that that's been my message today. And it is about being you. Learn to adapt, but think about maybe the areas where you can be a better leader, because now it's all up to you. You take the next step, whatever that is. We would love for you to reach out if you're interested in getting the book. It's available online. We are an association for women's advancement and connected women of influence. And we have conversations and discussions, and we share resources and our business experiences with each other because we learn from each other. So if that's attractive to you, we would love to be an association that would welcome you as one of our very lovely members of influence with Connected Women of Influence. I am delighted to say, and want to say thank you for joining us, but also delighted to say that we will be back for another Women Lead webinar in the near future. So thank you so much for listening. And I do see that we've got a couple of questions by people. I just want to hit a couple of answers. We've got some participants who have asked some questions. So here's our first question. Okay, a participant says, what's been the reaction of women when they read your book or have heard me speak on this topic? And thank you, Patricia, because, the interesting part about the reaction, I have to say, and I want to be a little bit, I hope, funny and relevant all at the same time. And that is, women have shared with me in the past, I can see them come in and they're, not scowling, that's the wrong word, but, I think they're maybe pessimistic is a great word. They're thinking, I'm here, it's an interesting subject, or I'm not loving the subject, I don't want to have men tell me what to do in business. But think about this, and that there are still men for now, not forever, but men for now are still holding that percentage of boardroom seats. There are men still that are the higher percentages of, top CEOs and earnings. I think there are things that women can do, but these are suggestions. And so the reaction I typically get with women post conversation or post information that I've shared is they come up and they say, my gosh, I wish I would have known a few of these strategies earlier in my career. And it's extremely positive. So, only you can make out of it where it's going to be beneficial to you. But, I think the information is extremely insightful. The interviews were fascinating. And again, what I very much attempted to do was when I interviewed men, I tried to focus in on the men that had the true heart and compassion of suggesting tactics and behavior and actions of what women can do to succeed more effectively. So I hope that answers your question. This is Lucy that says, your book is all about women acting differently, and why, this is a great one, why can't men support women and modify their actions, right? Oh, Lord. I did ask this to some men, and I said, dude, I said, help me understand. I go, here you're making all these suggestions for women and how they can change their behavior and actions. And I get that. And I think there are so many things we as women can do to change our behavior to get better results. But I said, what are you and what will you do to support more women? I mean, what are you going to do to kind of take a step forward and maybe change some of your actions? And it was interesting because a lot of the men, it stopped them. They actually paused and they went, they admitted that they really aren't doing things purposely and strategically to support more women. And two questions come to mind with that. Number one, should they? They don't have to. But there are men that actually do. But I will tell you, a lot of the men that I got feedback on when I asked that question is they say, I guess I don't, a couple of men shared with me that said, I really don't want to even look at the difference between men and women. And yet I do know so many women will say that I wish more men would be supportive. So I don't know that I have the answer on that one, which I think is disheartening, I will say. But I do think all of us and our behavior and actions, it can start with us. So if you start with those kinds of actions, what I will say that men did share is they said they would be more supportive as mentors and advocates if more women would ask them. And again, it's not about picking their brain. It's about saying, I really see you as an amazing senior leader. I really would value some opinions and feedback you might share with me. Could we schedule time for that? It's all in the approach and it's your communication. So I hope that helps. And then here's, I've only got time for one more question. And so this is from Kathy, who says, I've tried to speak up in meetings. So speaking up is good, but I'm still not being heard. And this is a big question. I do hear this from women quite frequently who will say, I hope many of you who are our listeners and and viewers have heard about the book Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg, which I think is an incredible book. And I do hear over and over by women that say, I'm leaning in, I'm speaking up, I'm asking, just as like I'm sharing with all of you to do in a different way by the interviews by men. And women will say, I'm doing that. And I think again, this is our approach in it. As I'm very dialed in meetings now where I see board meetings or committee meetings or a group of women, and a woman will bring up an idea, and I think it's the how this is done that determines success or lack of. And I'll see a woman that will toss out an idea, and again, it's their demeanor, it's their nonverbal, and it's the how they're putting out an idea. Women will kind of put out and say, I think what we should do is da 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 da, and nobody will hear it. Nobody will hear the statement, and I think, again, it's how you speak with influence. This is going to sound a little silly, but I know for me and what's worked and some of the women I interact with is women need to be very objective when they're bringing up ideas to have them accepted. Sometimes I've seen with women that they get pretty prideful about their idea, and when it's not accepted or taken, and someone else moves on from it and then comes up with the same idea just in a different way, it's like, well, gosh, that was my idea. And I see many times it's the way women bring it up. And what I've learned to do, and I hope this is one element, because I think this is, again, another webinar series that will unpack in a very detailed way, is I've seen women who will bring up something and then they get mad that it wasn't accepted, or it was, brought up as an idea later by someone else. But what I've learned to do is that I will present an idea, and I'll say, hey, I'm tossing this out. Here's one suggestion. I know there's many others, but here's one suggestion. What do you think? And I will ask the opinion based on the idea or speaking up at meetings. And I will ask for feedback. And I don't know what you might think about that, but it's really worked well for me, is that I'm actually asking for feedback and for an answer, and it just puts it in the perspective that this was an idea that was shared and gives people a chance to jump in. So that's my one nugget for today, and I hope that's helpful. I want to say very much thank you again for joining us for our very first Women Lead webinar series. We are going to be back again soon with our next webinar on how you, as a professional woman, can lead and achieve and succeed as a female leader in business. So thank you.